Good evening. Welcome to the Committee of Adjustment meeting for January 21st, 2025. I'd like to call it to order. Committee members in attendance this evening are Dylan Bailey, is online, Daniel Collins, Fabia Billing, and myself, Adam Ottershead. Committee member Kevin Antonitis sends his regrets. Staff members present this evening are Walter Basic, Deputy Director of Planning, Dahara Abu Warden, Administrative Coordinator and Secretary Treasurer. Live streaming. Members of the public are advised that our meetings are live streamed by the Town of Grimsby. Individuals and media may be audibly or visually recorded during this meeting. As a reminder, all electronic devices are to be in silent mode during our committee meeting. The purpose of the application and relative correspondence will be heard, following which the applicant will be given the opportunity to address the application. Any person concerned with the application will then be given an opportunity to speak. At the conclusion of the discussion, the committee will render a decision and advise of any applicable conditions. Copies of the decisions will be mailed to the applicant or agent and to any other person who files a written request. To request a copy of the decision, please email Dahara Abu Warden, Secretary Treasurer at coa@grimsby.ca. The applicant, the Town of Grimsby, the minister, or a specified persons or public body has the right to appeal either the decision itself or the conditions of consent to the Ontario Land Tribunal, OLT, within 20 days of the date of giving notice under subsection 17. Is completed for a consent application and within 20 days of the date of decision for a minor variance application. Specified persons and certain public bodies include public utilities, but do not include an individual or community association. Everyone present will be given opportunities to comment on the applications being heard. Please address your comments and questions to the chair. Each participant will be provided 5 minutes to speak. Each participant may speak only once. If you hear your comment presented by someone else, please do not duplicate the remarks. When you are called, we ask that you state your name and address for the record. Agency commenting on applications may request that certain conditions be imposed. Voicing objections to these conditions will not adversely affect the committee's decision. All members of the committee have viewed the properties on the agenda tonight and are familiar with the lands and that are subject to the applications. Do any members of the committee have a pecuniary interest with respect to the application that are before us this evening? I've declared a pecuniary interest in relation to application A4324-261 Ontario Street, which has already been filed with the clerk. I have a member that serves with the fire department. We will hear this application first, and I'll be excused from the meeting during the discussion and will not participate in discussion or voting on this application. And I believe there's no request for withdrawal or adjournment. Thank you. Have committee members had the opportunity to review the minutes from December 17th, 2024. Are there any questions or comments about the minutes? Okay, so I have a motion here. Moved by Dan, seconded by Fabia. Resolve that the minutes of the meeting held on December 17th, 2024 be approved. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand. Opposed, if any? That's carried. Okay, so we have first 3 applications for us tonight, and I'll be handing the chair over to Dan, who will take care of it.
Okay, the first application that we will hear is A4324 for 261 Ontario Street, and I'll turn it over to Dahara, thank you, for our presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me just get this full screen. So the purpose of this application is to facilitate the construction of an emergency vehicle storage facility on site. To permit the variances requested are to permit a minimum exterior side yard setback of 5 meters on the north, whereas a minimum 9-meter side yard setback is permitted, and to permit a minimum exterior side yard setback of 3 meters on the south side, whereas a minimum of 9-meter side yard setback is permitted. This is an image of the site plan, which was circulated along with the notice of hearing. This is an image, an aerial image of the neighborhood for context. These are the current conditions on site. And these are the agencies that have provided comments towards this application, and I will summarize those comments for you now. Planning staff have no objections to the minor variances proposed by the applicant. They have reviewed the application in the context of the 4 tests set out under Section 45 of the Planning Act and are of the opinion that the minor variance meets the intent of the official plan and the zoning bylaw, is appropriate for the development of the lands, and is minor in nature. Approval of the application is also compliant with the provisions of Section 2(3) of the Planning Act regarding provincial interests. They note a condition for final approval that the town will require an MTO permit through the site plan process prior to the construction of the proposed storage facility. Public Works staff note that there is no sanitary sewer located on Clark Street. They have no conditions. Niagara Region and the NPCA have no comments and no objections. MTO staff note that final approval of minor setbacks will require an MTO permit. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is the agent or applicant here to speak to the application? And if so, can you just state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Jim Kay, spelled K-A-Y, and the address is 261 Ontario Street. The deconstruction or deconstructing part of the parking lot to build a prefabricated parking garage is a practical way for the Grimsby Fire Department to enhance the storage and maintenance of the emergency response vehicles. And by providing secure and heated environment for these vehicles will not only extend their life of the apparatus, but also improve the readiness for emergencies, as these vehicles are currently stored in an unprotected parking lot. The use of this garage is somewhat of a temporary solution while the fire department's reviewing its service delivery model, and its strategic approach. This building itself has been identified dating back to 2010 as being somewhat deficient in storage space, and for multiple reasons, additions haven't occurred to this particular building, but we are storing not only current apparatus outside, but larger apparatus at our station number 2, which is located on Mountain. And that requires the firefighters to respond to 261 Ontario, pick up a department pickup truck, drive up the hill to get the apparatus to bring it back down. So the solution basically will allow us to move those apparatus down to the 261 Ontario Street site for a more efficient response. That's it in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kay. Any questions from the committee? Dylan, I see you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. It's proposed that this will be a temporary solution. Can you give me a context for temporary? Are we thinking, 2 years, 5 years? While your, I guess, longer term review is underway?
Most certainly. The temporariness relates to the fact that the fire department is going through a service delivery review, which includes the town of Lincoln. The building itself will not be temporary, but the use for the emergency response apparatus could be if another fire station is determined to be built in the West End, for example, to provide protection there. It would still be used, though, to house the smaller support vehicles that are located at 261. So it is a temporary response in that manner, I guess.
Sorry, just to be clear, the building itself would become, you're saying that the building itself would become permanent, but its current use would be temporary.
That's correct.
Okay.
So the storage garage, a 3-bay steel fabricated garage that will be used to house fire department vehicles. The emergency response vehicles, however, could be somewhat temporary in that a new station may allow the vehicles that we're storing on top of the hill to be moved down below the escarpment. but the storage facility would be used for our support vehicles and fire prevention and those types of things.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I was just, okay, I just was not clear on when we talk about temporary, if it was the use of it or the building itself. So I
Yeah.
guess just for clarification, I guess through you, Mr. Chair, do we need to worry about, this being sorry, are we approving the use of it, or are we approving the building, or does one just go hand in hand?
Thank you. I believe we're approving the building, not necessarily the use, and just the building and the setbacks in relation to the property lines. Does that make sense?
Well, it does. I guess I'm just I don't want to get caught up on this because I don't have a problem with it, but if the building is going to remain long-term, then why are we using temporary? Is it just the temporary use of it so we know the context, but the building itself will be maintained long-term? Is that right?
That's what I understand. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions from the committee? Okay, I see none. Anyone in the public that wishes to speak to this application or ask any questions? Okay, I see none. Do we have a resolution from the committee? Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to make a resolution that this application be approved. Resolved that minor variance application A43 26261 Ontario Street to permit a minimum exterior side yard setback of 5 meters north, whereas a minimum 9 meters side yard setback is permitted as per section 11, table 23 in zoning bylaw 1445 as amended, to permit a minimum exterior side yard setback of 3 meters south, whereas a minimum 9 meters side yard setback is permitted as per section 11, table 23 in zoning bylaw 1445 as amended. This be approved with a condition, the town will require an MTO permit through the site plan process prior to the construction of the proposed storage facility.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Member Bailey. So this is moved by Member Billings and seconded by Member Bailey. I have no comments to add, so let's put it to a vote. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye. No one opposed. Okay, so it has been approved with conditions, and please note there is a 20-day appeal period that will have to go through the process as well. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll call back in the chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So the next application on the agenda tonight is A44-24 for 32 St. Andrews Avenue. Dara?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the purpose of this application is to facilitate the construction of a detached dwelling and detached garage. The variances requested are to permit a maximum lot coverage of 32%, whereas a maximum lot coverage of 25% is permitted. To permit a minimum interior side yard setback of 1.2 meters, whereas 1.8 meters is required. To permit a maximum lot coverage of 11% for an accessory building, whereas a maximum lot coverage of 10% is permitted for an accessory building. So this variance, along with the first variance that I read out, were a little bit wrong on the notice that went out. The word maximum was written down as minimum on the notice. So I'd just like to note that. And additional variance is to permit a minimum rear side yard setback of 0.6 meters, whereas 1.3 meters is required. And we also had to add in another variance, which was not on the original application. And that is to permit a maximum eaves or gutter projection of 0.42 meters for an accessory building, whereas 0.25 meters is permitted. And this is an image of the site plan, which was circulated along with the notice. This is an image of the neighborhood for context. These are the current conditions on site. And these are the agencies that have provided comments. And I will summarize those comments for you now. Planning staff have no objections to the approval of the minor variances for relief from the zoning bylaw as amended with respect to the maximum lot coverage, accessory building lot coverage, interior side yard and rear yard setback for the accessory building. To summarize comments from Heritage Planning staff, they are of the opinion that the requested minor variances do not result in any adverse impacts to the cultural heritage value of the adjacent heritage property at 4 Nels Boulevard. Heritage staff will work with the property owners of 32 St. Andrews Avenue and 4 Nels Boulevard to provide support in mitigating any potential impacts resulting from the use of heavy machinery. Heritage Planning staff defer to the planning memorandum on the recommendation for approval. Public Works staff have one condition of requiring a lot grading and drainage plan. They offer the following comment. They note that the lot grading and drainage plan has been received and a full review of the plan will occur when conditional approval of the minor variance has been received. NPCA, the region and the MTO have no comments or objections. And back to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Is the applicant or agent present or online and wishes? Do you want to come to the podium? And just state your name and address for the record, please.
Oh,
Okay, any questions or comments or anything you want to add in regard to the application?
no, I think it was favorable and we're very happy with that. Thank you.
Okay, any questions from the committee for the applicant? You don't have any? No. Okay. Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to this application? Or anyone online? No? In that case, do we have a motion on the application and the reasons therefore? Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you. I find it resolved that minor variance application A4424 for 32 St. Andrews Avenue to permit a maximum lot coverage of 32%, whereas a maximum lot coverage of 25% is permitted as per section 7, table 11 and zoning bylaw 1445 as amended. To permit a minimum interior side yard setback of 1.2 meters, whereas 1.8 meter is required as per section 7, table 11 in zoning bylaw 1445 as amended. To permit a maximum lot coverage of 11% for an accessory building, whereas a maximum lot coverage of 10% is permitted for an accessory building as per section 7, table 2 in zoning bylaw 1445 as amended. To permit a minimum rear yard setback of 0.6 meters, whereas 1.3 meters is required as per section 7, table 11 in zoning bylaw 1445 as amended. To permit a maximum eaves gutter projection of 0.42 meters for an accessory building, whereas 0.25 meters is permitted as per section 418D in zoning bylaw 1445 as amended. Be approved with conditions. Okay, one condition, and it's the lot, town staff will require a lot grading and drainage plan demonstrating that stormwater runoff will not negatively impact nor rely upon neighboring properties. The plan shall include all proposed downspout discharge locations, all hardscape services such as driveways, walkways, patios, etc., and all physical features including hydrants, decks, etc., for both existing and proposed. The plan shall also note the location of the existing services, water, sanitary, storm, to the property line and the extension of services to the building face. My reasons are that it meets the 4 tests and it was outlined nicely by the staff report.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have a seconder on that? Fabia? Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye, raise your hand. Opposed, if any? That was carried, so your application was approved and it's subject to a 20-day appeal period before it comes final and binding. Thank you. So the next application is a B0824 129 Mountain Road, Dahara.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so the purpose of this application is to sever 0.4047 hectares of land shown on the sketch on the next slide as part 1 to retain 15.42 hectares of land shown as part 3 and dedicate 0.01569 hectares of land to Niagara region for road allowance widening purposes shown on the sketch as part 2. So this is the sketch or the image of the site plan, which was circulated along with the notice of hearing. This is an image of the neighborhood for context. These are the current conditions on site. And these are the agencies that provided comments, and I will summarize those comments for you now. Planning staff have reviewed the application in the context of Section 3(5) of the Planning Act and have concluded that application B0824 is consistent with the provincial planning statement and conforms with the provincial plans that are in effect. They have no objections to the approval of application proposed by the applicant, subject to the conditions below. That the address change fee be submitted to the town of Grimsby for municipal addressing to be assigned to the severed lot, and that a zoning bylaw amendment, which at minimum implements the sole permitted use on the retained lands to be agricultural purposes only, and site-specific zoning for the minimum lot area and minimum lot frontage be submitted and approved by the town of Grimsby. Public Works staff have one comment that they would like to see the location of the existing cistern or well location on the sketch provided. They have no conditions. To summarize, the region has the following comments. The application is consistent with the PPS and conforms to provincial and regional policies. As such, Regional Growth Management and Planning Division staff offer no objection to the application, subject to the satisfaction of NEC requirements and the NEC ensuring through an appropriate condition that a residential dwelling is prohibited on the retained farm parcel, that is Part 3, in accordance with the policies of the NEP. The NPCA provides the following comments. This lot is traversed by ELC codes which are conducive to wetland identification, swamps and marshlands. Within its northeastern and southwestern portions, 3 watercourses traverse this property, though our mapping currently only shows the easternmost as being a regulated feature. As the proposed lot lines are geographically distant from the potentially regulated features on the site, and as the retained lot is proposed to be APO, the NPCA offers no objections to development at this address. And finally, the NTO has no comments. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Is the applicant or agent for this application here present online or?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Denise Horn. I'm with NPG Planning Solutions. I'm the manager of Heritage and Policy Planning. And the property owners are here as well. Linda and Bill Emsley are here online. And be happily give you a presentation if Dilher, are you able to pull it up? That is wonderful. Thank you. Great. So Dilher provided a great overview to give you a sense of the property and the proposal before us this evening. I just want to note while that first slide is up that if you want to just jump back one slide, Dilher, if you don't mind. Sorry to make it to make you jump. I'll just note though that the current conditions are shown here in this image. In the presentation by Dilher, that was an image from 2022, which is prior to Linda and Bill Emsley even having bought the property. I noticed there was for sale signs up there. So just for clarification, what you're seeing here is actually the current conditions of the property. Okay, thank you, Dilher. We can proceed to the next slide. So to give you an overview, the agricultural operation of Bill and Linda Emsley is comprised of over 300 acres of lands that are generously sort of split between Lincoln and Grimsby. So the 330 plus acres is amounts to 134 hectares. So that is the agricultural operation overall. And they have products, they're growing wheat, soybeans, grass, and corn. As part of their agricultural operation. Okay, if we could proceed to the next slide, please. So you've already heard a description of the subject lands, but I'll note that currently the lands are 15.84 hectares with 186 meters of frontage on Mountain Road. And it's an irregularly shaped parcel at the moment, but it has an approximate depth of 418 meters. And currently there is a farmhouse on the property. So the uses include a rural residential use and of course the agricultural uses. The lands are in active agricultural production. The zoning is split, as you can see in this slide. The north portion, which is the orange section here, is within the Niagara Escarpment Plan. So it's regulated under the Niagara Escarpment Plan and it is zoned escarpment protection area specifically. And then the south portion outside of that orange highlighted area is basically governed by the Town of Grimsby official plan, and it is zoned specialty crop and tender fruit and grapelands specifically. And then existing structures on the property, you'll see a little bit better in the next slide. There's the existing brick farmhouse, which has been there since at least the 1950s and probably quite a bit earlier. There are 2 detached garages and 2 barns. So if we could proceed to the next slide, please. Thank you very much. So what you're seeing here is a sort of zoned in image or a portion of the property, the overall subject land. So the surplus farm dwelling is proposed to be severed and is located on part 1. So you'll see that there at the top left. And then part 2 is that small slice of land fronting Mountain Road, which is the proposed road widening that the region has indicated is to be required with a depth of approximately 3 meters. And then the remainder, which you cannot see all of here, is part 3. So the retained lands are part 3, which are the agricultural lands. And then just to note that the farmhouse on part 1 is currently serviced by municipal water and private septic. And the region did go out and make an inspection on in May 2024 for the purposes of the Niagara Escarpment Commission development permit to permit the severance. So they've taken a look and they've deduced that based on building code requirements, there's sufficient land for a backup septic system should it ever be required. Okay, next slide, please. So where we're at right now is we are fulfilling conditions of the Niagara Escarpment Development Permit, and that will include registering on the title of the subject lands in agreement that the lands will be zoned for agricultural purposes only, APO. And that would preclude the construction of any new residential dwelling on the farmland, so part 3. So no new dwelling unit would be permitted. But often APO will allow for a barn to serve the farm use on the property. And then what would follow subsequent to this consent to sever would be a zoning bylaw amendment, and that would be to address the APO requirements of the town for the portion of the lands that are still under the jurisdiction of the town. So that's the south portion of the lot. And then to recognize the reduced lot area and the reduced lot frontage. So these are going to be the requirements that we would address in a separate process subsequent to this consent to sever. And if we move on to the next slide. So as per the planning justification report that we've provided, it's our professional opinion that the application is consistent with the PPS, conforms to the Greenbelt Plan, the Niagara Escarpment Plan, the Niagara OP, and the Town of Grimsby Official Plan, and that the applications will overall achieve the long-term protection of ag lands in the Niagara Escarpment Protection Area. And we are working towards obtaining the development permit from the Niagara Escarpment Commission, and basically we'll be fulfilling those conditions concurrently to this consent application. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and I don't know if Bill and Linda, if you had anything that you'd like to add as well.
Not at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you have any questions from the committee to the applicant or the agent? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to this? Seeing none, do I have a motion on the application and the reasons therefore? Dylan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Be it resolved that consent application B08-24 for 129 Mountain Road to sever plus or minus 0.4047 hectares of land as part 1, to retain plus or minus 15.42 hectares of land as part 3, and dedicate plus or minus 0.01569 hectares of land to Niagara Region for road allowance widening purposes as of part 2, be approved with conditions as it meets the 4 tests as laid out in the staff report and the presentation made this evening. Mr. Chair, did you want me to read all of the conditions?
Yeah, I think maybe it's best to do, because unless the agent or applicant, have you had a chance to see the conditions?
Yes, Mr. Chair, sorry, through you, we have had a chance to review the conditions presented in the staff plan.
Okay.
And have no concerns.
Okay, perfect. Okay, Dylan, it's up to you if you want to read them or not. Thanks.
I'm happy to read them so it's there for the record and part of the recording if you'd like. The following conditions include: 1, the applicant provide the Secretary Treasurer with deeds in triplicate for conveyance of the subject parcel or registrable legal description of the subject parcel, together with a copy of the depositive reference plan, if applicable, for the issuance of the certificate of consent. 2, that the final certificate fee payable to the Town of Grimsby be submitted to the Secretary Treasurer. 3, that all conditions of consent be fulfilled within 2 years from the date of notice of decision pursuant to subsection 5341 of the Planning Act, failing which this consent shall be deemed to be refused. 4, subsection 3 or 5 of section 50 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, shall apply to any subsequent conveyance or transaction involving the severed land. 5, that the address change fee to be submitted to the Town of Grimsby for municipal addressing to be assigned for the severed lot. 6, that a zoning bylaw amendment, which at a minimum implements the sole permitted use of the retained lands, be agricultural purposes only, APO, and site-specific zoning for the minimum lot area and a minimum lot frontage be submitted and approved by the Town of Grimsby. And 7, a residential dwelling is prohibited on the retained farmland, that being parcel part 3, in accordance with the policies of the NEP. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Do I have a seconder on that motion? Fabia? Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye, raise your hand. Opposed, if any. So the application was carried and your application was approved subject to the appeal period. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
And that being our final application, the next meeting for the committee adjustment will be held on February 18th, 2025. Thank you. Have a good evening. Thank you. Bye, Dylan.